Welcome back. You have been doing an awesome job putting column names in your select clause. You have also seen how you can bring back all column names from a table by saying select star from table. Today we are going to talk about even more things you can put in your select clause. After today's lesson, you will know how to bring back more than columns that are in the database in your result set. You will learn how to put in constants in your select clause and calculated columns in the select clause. Constants are values that don't change. You can put them in your select clause and they will return the same value for every single row. Let's say we were getting all subject IDs from the subjects table where the active flag was equal to yes. So we were bringing back all active subjects. Let's say we also wanted a separate column that said the subject was an active subject. We could add the words active subject in the select section, and now next to every subject ID in the result set, there would be a column named active subject with the words active subject in each row of the data. Now that active subject is text and not a number, we would want to put single quotes around it. This is what our result set would look like. Next to every subject ID where the subject ID is active, there is a column named active subject with the words active subject in each row of data. So now that we have an example of a constant, let's talk about what a calculated column is. Calculated columns allow you to manipulate result sets without changing the data in the table itself. The first way you can manipulate the values in a result set is to add a mathematical calculation. Let's take a look at what we mean by that with an example. Remember how the party behavior table has rows for each subject for each party they attended with a behavior score and a dress score? We could write a query using this table to see all of the subject IDs and behavior scores and dress scores for party ID number 1. Our result set may look something like this. But what if Cinderella wanted to view the dress score and behavior score together, more like a super score for each subject? This way she could easily identify guests who were not only behaving poorly, but also dressing poorly, and guests who were not only dressing sharp, but also behaving wonderfully. We could manually do it, or we could combine these two columns in our select section by using the plus sign and adding them together. This time our result set would look something like this. Cinderella would see that subject ID 4 was really a hit at party 1 because subject 4 combined dress score and behavior score was 17. And subject ID 1 wasn't behaving or dressing up particularly well for that party. She had a combined score of 8. On to another example of how a calculated column may come in handy. So one of Cinderella's biggest pet peeves was guests who RSVP'd after the RSVP date. There was a lot of preparation to do, and Cinderella liked to have a good idea on the count of guests that RSVP'd yes. She requested a list of subjects that RSVP'd after the RSVP by date so she could send them a friendly little reminder on RSVPing on or before the RSVP date, and a note on how to easily log into Princessware to RSVP on time. So the fields that we're interested in are the RSVP date and the RSVP by date. So the RSVP date is when the subject actually RSVP'd, and the RSVP by date is the requested date to RSVP. So a possible query to identify those subjects who were RSVPing after the RSVP by date may look like this. Select subject ID, party ID from party behavior where RSVP date is greater than RSVP by date. So these subjects RSVP'd after the requested date. The result set may look something like this. Cinderella would notice that subject ID 58 was on the list several times and might be a little irked. But before she did anything rash, she thought it would be helpful to see how many days late subject 58 was in all of his or her RSVPs. If the RSVPs were only a day late, it wouldn't be a huge deal. Cinderella asked if you could add a column in the report that would show her the difference between the RSV requested date and the RSVP date. The query would look something like this. Select subject ID, party ID, RSVP date minus RSVP by date from party behavior where RSVP date is greater than RSVP by date. In our select section, we have that calculated column where we are subtracting the RSVP requested date from the date that the subject actually RSVP'd. This would give us the number of days late that these subjects were in their RSVP. The result set could look something like this, and if you'll notice, subject 58 was excessively late in her RSVPs, so Cinderella would definitely be reaching out to subject 58 about this. One more helpful example of a calculated column is the concatenated column. Sounds pretty fancy, but don't worry, it's pretty easy. This is when you put different columns together. You could also put constant values together. You do it by typing in one value, then two straight lines, then another value, and it puts the value in one column in your result set. We'll take a look at an example. So here's what using the concatenated symbol looks like. We are combining the first and last name in one column. Here's what the result set would look like. First name, last name, all together in one column, all concatenated together. If you'll notice, there's no space in between the first and last name. If we wanted a space, we would actually need to add in another concatenation with a space in between the first and last names. Our new query would look like this. Select subject ID, first name, concatenated symbol, a single parentheses around a space, and then another concatenated symbol, and then last name from subjects. Here's what our result set would look like. Now there's a space between the first name and last name. Great job today. So now that we saw how to put constants and calculated columns in our select section and saw what our result set would look like, it's time for some practice. And then on to the next lesson where we learn two helpful techniques, aliasing and ordering.